And now, from beyond our dimension, this is the JeffMara podcast. Here's Jeff.
My guest is Richard Lawrence, Executive Secretary of the Aetherius Society, psychic medium, award-winning international best-selling author, and one of the world's leading authorities on UFOs and their spiritual message. Richard, welcome back. It's great to have you again.
Oh, thank you, Jeff. It's great to see you.
Well, you're perfect for my channel because I think I'm a blend of UFOs and spirituality.
We're like-minded souls there, then, because that's that's totally up my alley. That's, as we say over here. Because I actually don't think you can, and they say UAPs, don't they now?
Right.
But whatever, UFOs, you can't understand UFOs, in my opinion, without taking on board the spiritual dimension of their existence and of their message.
The UFO world appears to me to be divided into two different camps. One is that all ETs are spiritual beings and they only want the best for us. And the others believe that there are good and bad ETs. Where do you sit?
Yeah. I sit in both camps, actually, because I think there are bad ETs out there, not in this solar system, but out there. But we are protected from them by the wonderful, great intelligences in this solar system who are 100% good. But I do think, having said that, the hostile approach, the approach that we better be careful, they might invade us and etc., are foolish. I'm sorry to use that word, in one regard, which is very simple regard, is that if these intelligences really wished us harm, they could take over the world easily, they could kill us easily, they could do whatever, conduct surgical experiments or whatever it is they wanted to do. They wouldn't have to go around the houses. They wouldn't have to just take people secretly from their beds and conduct some sort of strange operation on them and then return them to their beds. They could take over hospitals and they could bring their own equipment if that was what they wanted to do. So I think it has to logically be concluded that they are friendly.
That makes sense to me. Some people believe that if you reach a certain technological ability, that it must equal spiritual ability as well. But I kind of counter that argument with, if you look at humanity, if you look at humanity 1,000 years ago to where we are today, are we any more spiritual than we were 1,000 years ago?
That's actually the problem, isn't it? I mean, we've come on technologically, but we've still got wars, we've still got dangers, we've got bigger dangers because we have worse weapons. Evolution is a spiritual thing, and this is what we need to, this is why we're here. This is why they are here. In fact, a very early communication through Dr. King made this very clear. Be still and know that I am God, this communicator said through Dr. King in trance, in a deep trance, samadhic trance. Be still and know that I am God, he said, is one of the great messages in the planetary system. So they are coming, and also you can't understand these craft, technologically even, without taking on board some spiritual concepts. And this is why open-minded professors such as Avi Loeb and so on are struggling with Three-Eye Atlas, because it's got a technology that they don't understand at the moment, or it appears to have. He's not saying it's definitely alien, but it appears to have. And they can't understand it, and I don't think they will understand it until they take on board what you might call spiritual science. Energies that exist. I mean, I wrote a book, actually, with Dr. George King, who founded the Aetherius Society. I should say he wrote a book with me, to put it is more correct. And it was called Contacts with the Gods from Space. And it's the last book that was published in his lifetime. And that was in 1996. He died in 1997, that he wrote. But in its pages are revelations about some of the technology which have been proved in the last 2 or 3 years, even mentioned in this film that came out recently, The Age of Disclosure, which have been confirmed, in Congress and so on. It's now known. We've talked about it a bit before. But he said this and wrote this 30 years ago, virtually, as of next year. And he did it, one, because of his spiritual connections with beings from other worlds, and two, because some of the technology they use is a combination of science and spirituality, such as, for example, the power of the mind to control even the materials of the craft.
Let me stop you for one moment. For the people that are meeting you for the first time, can we review who Dr. King was and his association with the Aetherius Society?
Yeah, indeed. Dr. George King is an Englishman who spent most of his adult life in America, actually. But he was from Yorkshire, which is the north of England, very down-to-earth upbringing, not an easy upbringing. But he was a searcher for truth, as I think viewers of the JeffMara podcast are. And he was looking for it very, very passionately, very, very intently from a boyhood. And he decided to become, after the Second World War, when he would be in his mid-20s, a yogi. He decided to take to the practice of yoga. Now, yoga, first of all, wasn't practiced by many people at all in the West in those days. Certainly English people, probably may be true of American people too. It wasn't practiced, and now it's often thought of as a sort of keep fit, keep healthy, keep slim. That's the asanas. That's not the main part of yoga at all. It can do you great good, but it's not essential to reaching the deepest levels of yoga. Yoga is an advanced practice. Now, when he took it up, though, he took it up for 8 hours a day. And he did this for 10 years. Matter of fact, I co-authored his biography, which is also an audiobook, called The King Who Came to Earth. And it's a remarkable life that he led. So he practiced these advanced forms of yoga. For those familiar with this, there's Kundalini yoga, Raja yoga, Jnana yoga, just to name 3. Obviously, things like mantra and so on. And he was doing this for 8 hours a day. He had a job. He was a driver. He worked in a company. He had different jobs. The job didn't particularly bother him, but he had to work to earn money. But he was doing this practice, this advanced practice of yoga. And as a result of that, and forewent the things that most people would be enjoying in their 20s and early 30s. He led a very strict, disciplined life, and he didn't have time, really, for much recreation at all. But he did attain a very, very high state of consciousness through doing this at will, and that's a key point, at will. So you could switch it on, switch it off. Yoga gives you control, not control over others, but control over yourself. And so as a result of that, he could enter a state which is known in yoga circles. It's a Samadic word. Sorry, it's a Sanskrit word, and the word is samadhi. And he could enter samadhi, which is a very deep and elevated state of meditation. Now, because he could do that, he was contacted and used as a channel using trance mediumship for beings from other worlds. And, that's a contentious thing to say in 2025. But boy, can you imagine saying that in 1955, 70 years ago, in England, very conservative, with small c, very traditional. There he was. And those days, wrongly, they wouldn't particularly expect men to be doing yoga. Well, they wouldn't expect anyone much to be doing yoga unless they'd come over from India, probably. But there he was, he did it, he mastered it, and he could then be used as a channel. So I want to stress the training and the rigor and the hard work and discipline that he applied to get to that point. Because I know there are a lot of people out there who really think all you need to do is take a weekend seminar and then you can pick your planet, Pleiades, Sirius, what's it going to be? It's sad because, I mean, often they're well-meaning, good, well-intentioned people. When you get a medium, and I know you have a medium by the name of Elaine, an English medium, because you've told me about her, who says, well, I'm in touch with a 19th century fairly ordinary Englishman that I knew in a past life, for example, that's very credible. I mean, that's perfectly believable, because there will be a natural rapport, probably, between Elaine and the person communicating through her, which may have been developed in the past life, may have been developed between the lives, so that she could come back and do this in her next incarnation to prove life after death and so forth. And this can be helpful to people, especially bereaved people. And that's all good. But that's a very, very different thing indeed from channeling a cosmic intelligence, or indeed a true master from this earth, such as, say, Count Saint Germain. Now, I myself have done channeling. I don't claim to have channeled any masters. I have channeled advanced writers, among others, and that's a good little acid test, but I haven't used trance, and I actually don't recommend people generally to use trance. And I tried it because it can diminish your control over your subconscious mind. In other words, and your imagination too. So unwittingly, you've got less, unless you're able to enter this samadhic type of condition, which Dr. King would call a positive trance state, then you are lessening your mental faculty in order to allow someone to speak through you. And this gives you less ability to be a pure channel, because then you have less control and discipline over your subconscious mind and so on. These things can kick in very easily, and they do. Also, even if you channel in the way that I do, and so many others do, which is using telepathy, as Alice Bailey did, as Madame Blavatsky did, and you are getting the message telepathically, you need to focus purely on the words you're getting. And if you're clairaudient or you have psychic hearing, you can hear also some of the voice. You've got to be really careful with this stuff, I think, Jeff, and I will say, because if you don't, the danger is a mental health condition, to be blunt, to be really blunt about it. One has to be responsible here, and there are people who think they're hearing voices who just aren't. And so you've got to be careful. But you can train yourself, you can get yourself, and I've done it for over 40 years, and I'm nowhere near the level of Dr. George King. I'm not claiming contact with the Master Jesus, with a being from Mars, with the Master Aetherius from Venus, as he did. And rightly so, because these were genuine channelings. In fact, in the audio book I mentioned, you can hear them. And they are very authentic and very beautiful. The sound adds greatly. But, as Socrates said, you've got to know what you don't know. You've got to know what you can do. You've got to know what you can't do. And so, for example, if I do my much lower level of channeling, nevertheless with very elevated people in terms of writers, such as Francis Bacon and Dante, what I do, I just focus so much on the words, I don't think about their meaning at all. I will just get, sometimes I'll just get letters like DOG. I don't get dog, I just get letters, and I write it down. I don't have to think about it, because if you do, with the best will in the world, you can start, inventing things without meaning to. You can color it. Your prejudices can come through. Your wishes can come through, and this happens to, I would say, to nearly all mediums. I'm sorry to be blunt. I think there's a bit of that. Might not be very much of it, though. So with Elaine, for example, your medium you told me about, there may be very little of it. But that is always the danger. Anyway, I divert there. But Dr. King, he started getting these messages from 1954, these communications. And right from the beginning, they were spiritual in content. I mean, from the absolute beginning, they virtually said, actually, I can give an example because in my book, UFOs and the Extraterrestrial Message, some of these are published. So here's one actually from 1954, talking about the nature of, because they were often, he was asked this so often, of their bodies. And this is the answer the Master Aetherius gave to that question. He said this: it is rather complicated because a lot of us exist in subtle states. And when we come to this planet or to Mars or to any other world, we build for ourselves a body to live on that planet. It is not possible for me to give English names for the constituents of the molecules of the subtle bodies because you have no words to describe them. So tenuous are these bodies that it would be like giving a name to the molecules of your soul, as it were, which is, I think, is an amazing, and that was October 1954, just months after he got the communication, at a time when there were other contactees. Far as I know, there aren't any other organizations that started at that time that have been active ever since, that are active now, other than the Aetherius Society, certainly at an international level. And he started all that, and he formed the society in 1955. Long preamble to your question there, Jeff.
Hello, beautiful people. I'm interrupting this podcast for a quick transmission. If you haven't seen it yet, check out this month's merch design. It's out of this world. Also, join our Substack newsletter for more content. And if you love our videos, be sure to subscribe. It helps out more than you know. End of transmission. Earlier you mentioned The Age of Disclosure. Have you seen it? And
I have.
What are your thoughts on it?
It's, I mean, I think I'm glad it's come out, because it's getting very silly now, this cover-up. And in one way, I really like it. It's designed for the public. It's not, there's a lot of stuff in it that people who know about UFOs will already know. But it's all put together very well. So in one way I like it, because it does reveal the fact there's been this cover-up. This is something, and they actually reveal some more about the cover-up that has been going on for 80 years. Matter of fact, some people say that in the 1930s, Mussolini retrieved a UFO, and the Vatican passed this through to the American government. So that's even more than 80 years ago. But that's not in this film. That is a claim that has been made, actually, by very credible people. But anyway, they absolutely make it clear this cover-up's been going on for 80 years. Now, this is completely vindicates the Aetherius Society. May I quickly say that? Because I don't know of another organization that was out there campaigning in 1955, 70 years ago, saying there is a cover-up, saying there is a silent group, which they now call deep state usually, then, and which is still going today. So from that point of view, it's fantastic. It's fantastic to see it coming out. In fact, in the communications Dr. King received, he said that it will come out eventually. I think there was a message he got saying about the silence group, which sort of said, they have their plan, we have our plan, we will win. And so this has been an ongoing battle. So in that way, it's great. And there were a lot of revelations along those lines, which were very interesting. So that was all good. What I didn't like about it was its lack of spirituality. And the fact that what it focused on, it seems to me, and it's not the fault of the filmmakers entirely, this at all, because this is the viewpoint of the politicians and even some of the whistleblowers, is that we need to prepare for a hostile invasion. That's why it's important, they were saying, that we need to know this. And we need to know that China and Russia have also been having their programs in looking into what they now call UAPs, unidentified anomalous phenomena. They used to be called UFOs, fine. They sort of came out clearly with that. So there were two strands to it. One is we need to be able to protect ourselves, even though they fully admitted in the course of it, and they had some very credible witnesses. They had 34 credible witnesses. One was Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, I think Director of National Intelligence. And then there was a lot of congressmen and women and there were senators, there were scientists, there were military, senior military, naval, Air Force personnel, and various bureaucrats from intelligence and so on. So these were good witnesses. In that way, it was very good. But all the time, it was all about protecting ourselves from invasion, which is just stupid. It's such a stupid thing to do, because clearly they're not hostile. They were hostile, they would have easily invaded us by now. And even if we tried to stop them, we wouldn't. It would, our defense would last. But I mean, if it lasted seconds, I'd be surprised. They are so technologically superior to us, and they know that. These people know that, and they say it openly. The other problem with it is that they say that this cover-up, and possibly truthfully say, this cover-up's been going on because there's an arms race between China, Russia, America. And they want to get the knowledge first. They want to get hold of some craft, and they have done, they say, and reverse engineer it, and then use it for warfare and to gain world supremacy. And this is pathetic. I mean, you know, it's not the film's fault. They're revealing what the thinking is behind the scenes. I mean, the people who are doing this, in America at least, aren't the presidents, the directors of the CIA or FBI or anything like that, heads of intelligence. They are mysterious figures who've worked, you know, in various offices in the Pentagon or in intelligence for maybe 20, maybe 30 years. They don't really respect presidents very much. They've been running this program called the Legacy Program for decades, for 80 years. So it's been handed down. They're also, and this is a bit concerning, they've involved commercial enterprises like Lockheed and people like this who have been given exotic materials to research into and to try and reverse engineer, and they've now lost track of who's got what. And of course, people like Lockheed, they don't have any, you know, commitment to the American people. They don't have to come forward and be democratically elected or anything. So that's a bit of a concerning thing that came out, and they would use it for their own technical purposes, for their businesses. But essentially, these people, whoever they are, the deep state, whatever you call them, they have been regarding presidents as, you know, Johnny-come-lately, as we say over here. I don't know if you say that there, but, you know, here today, gone tomorrow people. Yeah. They don't take them seriously, nor do they take seriously a director of the CIA or these sort of political appointments. They in fact humor them. They don't think they've got it. Now, this is quite serious. They don't think the president of America, in one case, was a sufficiently high level of classification clearance to be told things about UAPs and UFOs. So that's all been going on. So there were some very good revelations in it, especially for the public at large who you know. And then there's been two weapons used, haven't there, against those of us who believe. I've been talking about this for over 40 years. When I first lectured in the UK, and indeed in America sometimes on this, and New Zealand and Australia, we were in England, we would get physically booed sometimes in a lecture hall 40 years ago for saying some of these things. If you went out and said, look, governments are lying to you, you would be a conspiracy nutter in their minds. And people still say things. They, you know, I don't know if you use the word nutter over there, but, you know, conspiracy, loony, or whatever. And you'd be laughed at. And of course, ridicule is a weapon. Ridicule is quite a good weapon for dark forces to use and to condition people into laughing at these things, because then they don't have to think about them. Oh, that's ridiculous. You've seen that guy and what he says. He's out to lunch, etc. That they don't even look at it. So they've got dismissal is one thing. People dismiss it out of hand without investigating it. And the other thing is ridicule. And it's improved tremendously. And this film might help with that, because these are serious people, they're credible people, and hopefully the stigma that has been there will go, or start to go. It has improved a lot, actually. I know, I come back to Dr. King again. In 1958, he was running a rally in Trafalgar Square, which is a massive square in London, very central part of London, demanding that governments tell the truth, or the British government as it was then, tells the truth about what they call flying saucers. He was saying that then in 1958. Now we know that Winston Churchill, much like the president in America, when he was Prime Minister of Britain, he was lied to. He was fobbed off. He wasn't told the truth. He tried to find out the truth and didn't get much of an answer. So Dr. King was way ahead of his time. And I will just throw this in, that three of us went to celebrate the 65th anniversary of that particular rally in Trafalgar Square with an online presentation. And there was two cameramen and me. And I will say this, we spent the day there doing this. And that evening, in separate places, all three of us had UFO sightings. And we're quite skeptical about sightings. We don't just believe anything, could it be a drone? Could it be a satellite? Could it be we're very careful. And my wife and I actually that night had a sighting that together. And the sighting we had was of a flying saucer. It was a disc-shaped craft, which I've never seen before. And it was just literally, and this might sound incredible to some people, but it was literally flying, not almost over our house, but we walk around the corner, we go on an evening stroll, and then it flew by. And my two friends who came with me separately, another part of town, also had sightings, not like that one, different sightings. And I think the wife of one of them had a sighting with him too, I believe. So that was it should prove something which they always used to say, and I found this to be absolutely true over and over again. If you take one step towards them, they will take two towards you. But the onus has to be on us.
Well, it makes sense to me that if you are the person that's in possession of all this technology and you have a reversed engineered craft and you've been buzzing around the solar system, that you could care less about the leaders of this planet.
Yes. Well, a lot of people say, why do they bother? Why do they come here? I mean, this must be an exercise in visiting the lunatic asylum of the solar system, the backward planet. I mean, war is insane. Let's face it. I mean, they don't have wars on Mars and Venus. And before somebody jumps in and says there's no life on Mars or Venus, I refer you back, as they say in British Parliament, to my earlier statement, which was that quote about the subtle bodies of extraterrestrials. They aren't necessarily physically visible. UFOs aren't necessarily physically visible. This brings us to the spiritual dimension, to the whole subject. They're able to travel through the frequencies of space. That is why there's actually a band, I think in America, called Blink 182, I think they might be called.
Yes.
Which was named after this phenomenon, I believe. They blink out. I think they're big UFO believers, that band. And this is something that's been seen and was seen, right the way through cases going back into ancient times. This isn't even a new phenomenon. This is a very ancient phenomenon. This isn't something that just sprung up in the space age today. We might be more aware of it now. We might think of it as craft, as opposed to, Jesus traveling in a cloud, which is hard to do, or a star hovering over a stable, which is impossible to do, or the many other things that you see reported in other texts around the world, such as in the Hindu texts and the Greek legends and South America and so on. This is a very ancient phenomenon. You had whole monasteries in the medieval days coming out to witness what they called a ship in the sky. This has been going all the time, but they have this capability to travel through the frequencies or dimensions, if you like. So on Mars, on Venus, even if we could get there, doesn't mean we'd actually see the life there, but it is there.
Do you think there is another species of beings that have been cohabiting this planet with us for millennia that are much more intelligent than we are, much more evolved, etc.? And those are the plasma beings?
Yeah. Well, I won't call it a species. So I don't know of that, no. But I do believe, I'm sure actually, that there are advanced intelligences on this planet, most of whom come from this planet, who don't need to die. And this is called Ascension. And it's the most wonderful thing. It's actually where, excuse me, it's where we're headed, Jeff. You, me, all of us. This is our destination. This is complete liberation. This is what they used to call, and some still do call, nirvana. It's not a rock band. It's an elevated state of consciousness. And these are individuals, male and female, of various cultures and races, who have attained that state. They don't need to reincarnate anymore. We need to reincarnate. It's a shame that we need to reincarnate, as a matter of fact, but we do. Because if we didn't, we'd go way off piste. We'd go right off, we'd lose contact with our real selves. But when we pass on, we're able to have that contact again and recalibrate and come back into another life in order to evolve. That's our process. That's what we need. But very advanced souls can overcome that. And when they do overcome that, by the way, they go through ascension, and frequently they are taken up in a craft. In fact, I've got another message I brought here especially on that very topic. If I can only find it, Jeff. October 54 again. It's a very short message, actually, again through Dr. King. And this is it. We also have vessels, again, in answer to questions about UFOs, flying saucers, Master Aetherius again. We also have vessels which carry the masters. These are often invisible, and they can come within the scope of your radar and yet not be recognized. It is sometimes necessary for the masters to travel thus and carry with them certain people on the verge of ascension. The masters also occasionally use this type of vessel when they're spiritualizing your earth. So there are craft, again, invisible to us, but very much existent on a different frequency. And this beautiful reference to taking a pupil on the verge of ascension. And there are examples in history, and I can quote examples if you're interested, who've been taken up in a spacecraft. And this is described in more than one occasion, by the way, in the Mahabharata and the Ramayana, I believe, certainly in the Hindu texts. And I published the examples of this in my books. And I can quote for them if you're interested. But these would be people, very advanced people, that when they're ready to break free from reincarnation, they might be taken up in a spacecraft, which itself might be invisible to us, in order to go through that process. And then after that, some of them remain here. And this is my answer to your question about another species. I wouldn't call it another species in this case, but it is a group of people. And among them also, I believe, are people, beings from other worlds who join them. And they're all here for one reason. It certainly isn't their health or their well-being. It's to help us. And that's the only reason they stay. And actually, there is a bigger reason than helping us, and that's to help the planet, the Mother Earth.
Many of my guests talk about the ascension. And is it possible that the entire planet of humanity could all evolve into this non-physical form, as you say?
It is. It's a very big ask. I mean, it's not going to happen easily. It's something that we have to work towards, but absolutely it's something that will eventually happen to every man, woman. They might be a child at the moment. They might be on another realm at the moment, but it must happen. It will happen when they're incarnate, physically incarnate, and it will happen when they are ready, whoever they are. And they'll be very highly spiritual individuals who no longer need the experience cycle we have here, which is relatively extremely primitive in cosmic terms.
I guess they'll take the forms of these non-subtle bodies or non-subtle physical forms, as you mentioned, like the beings on Mars.
It's a beautiful thing that what they can do when they reach that stage is they can exist wherever they determine. So it's not like, you might get a spirit guide, as they call them, or some person who's passed on, and you might have a vision of them. If you're clairvoyant, you might see them. You could describe them. It's happened to me. It's happened to other people. They can be more vividly visible than a physical person in certain ways. That can happen, but those are not ascended people. They are people who are on another realm who for some reason are able to visit you, or you're able to see, or maybe you're having an out-of-body experience and you actually can go there and you can see them. But an ascended master, male or female, they are able to come to this realm and physically exist. And if they have to do something quite functional, involving tools even, physical hand tools or whatever it might be, they could do it. And then they can also just take their energy, their consciousness, to another level where they might be spirit guides or even a higher level than that. And so they have complete control over their subtle bodies, as do cosmic intelligences.
Uh-oh. My camera did something weird. I hope you can hear me. You can hear me.
I can hear you well. I can hear you very well.
Now I'm back.
Mm.
It makes me wonder if there's a being in here with me because my camera is doing these
You
crazy...
blinked out.
It just, Blink 182.
Yeah.
It just turned on and off. All right. And I had a question for you and then I got distracted.
That was a sign. I was running, I must tell you about that. I was running a workshop in a beautiful part of England called Cornwall, by the sea. Anyway, that's irrelevant where it was, but we were running it in somebody's house, and it was about psychic development. And I was talking about people on the other realms like we are now. And it was over a decade ago. And the owner of the house got a phone call on an ordinary landline phone, not a mobile phone. And they said, "Oh, I'm terribly sorry. I thought I'd unplugged that phone. I'd just mentioned guides, communicating with guides, and the phone rang." So I said, "Well, it's all right. You must answer it." He went over, and the phone wasn't plugged in, but it had rung. And there's a group of us there. And it was just at that moment, like you blinking out there.
And what was weird is my camera, it just like turned itself on and off. And it's plugged into the wall.
There you go. Yeah, these things happen. I mean, actually, a friend of mine who's passed on now, but called Ray Nielsen, was in the very early days, probably in the 1960s, was recording a transmission by whenever Dr. King took a transmission, it was recorded on more than one tape recorder for posterity. And hence we have accurate record of all the messages he received. And Ray was on one of the machines, the tape recorders, old-fashioned reel-to-reel tape recorder. And he suddenly realized he hadn't plugged it in. And he went over, he was really panicking. He went over, but the reels were going round. So he quietly plugged it in and they got the full recording. So he told me, that's an anecdote, and he's a person who didn't make things up. So these things do happen.
Since Dr. King has transitioned to wherever he is now, have you been in contact with him?
It's a great thing. In the Aetherius Society, we have to be very careful. We have a kind of a rule that nobody else can claim contact. Well, no, they can claim it, but nobody's claim of contact with cosmic intelligence or Dr. King even would be accepted by the organization. And the reason for this is you can get delusion creeping in and so on. And I'm going to say to you that I'm not going to claim contact with Dr. King. But I will say this, I've very much felt his presence, and I'm not the only one at all in that regard. I'm very aware of him. And people have seen him behind me, and some of them are people who've never met him or even seen a photograph of him, actually. They're like at a public lecture. And then later they'll see a picture and say, well, that man was standing behind you when you were speaking. I've had that more than once from people who are completely new. So, yeah, I am aware, but there is no, as it were, official channel of Dr. King. And that's to safeguard the society, because other organizations, like let's name the Theosophical Society, just to name one, were riven with multiple claims of contacts with the Master KH, the Count Saint Germain, very popular thing to claim, and you end up with confusion if you're not careful.
If we get back to Ascension, many people don't want to have to reincarnate again.
Yeah.
So what are some practical things that we can do in our life to be able to ascend?
Wow. Yeah, that's right up my street. That's I'm a round peg in a round hole when you ask a question like that. I'm going to say, and this is not a book plugging exercise because I get no royalties. I want people to know from this particular book I'm going to mention now, or any books I wrote with Dr. King, actually. But there is a book called Realize Your Inner Potential, and Dr. King chose that title. You know, I offered him one or two and he chose that. And he wrote this book with me. He passed on while it was being written. He had left a notarized instruction for me to complete it, which I did after his life. And in that book, there are a number of spiritual practices that people can use. There's over 40, actually. And they're the practices that I have used. So I know they work. I haven't ascended, but I have entered advanced, what you might call it. Well, in recent years only, I have entered somatic states more than once. And so I know they work. They are, more importantly than that, though, they work in terms of service to others. And the big essence, if you were to say, what is the essence of the Aetherius Society? I would say it was service to others. But service to others in the most effective way you can serve. And the way that we serve is spiritual service. So that is the best way, to just answer your question directly, to prepare for ascension, is to give the most effective spiritual service you can possibly give. And I know for a fact that the practice in Realize Your Inner Potential, as far as I'm concerned, they're second to none. I'm not saying there aren't other good practices out there, because there are. But that's what I would recommend, and that's what I've used.
Well, what do you mean by spiritual service?
By spiritual service, and that's a very good point, if I may say, because a lot of people have asked me, particularly in the mainstream media, which I've done a lot of mainstream media interviews over the years, and they'll say, you know, if you could give material service, you know, through medicine, through aid, financial relief, etc., or spiritual service, which is the better? What's my answer to that? Spiritual service being prayer, being sharing knowledge, being consciousness altering, shall we say. And my answer to that question is, right now, I mean, it's all needed. It's all completely essential. But in the end, because far more people are prepared to give material service because they believe in it, if you believe in spiritual service, especially a thing called the 12 blessings, which is a practice that is absolutely life transforming, not just for you, but for the world. If you believe in that, I would do that. It doesn't mean, you know, we've got to have our medical services, we've got to have all the other services, so it all goes together. But if you can look at it this way, right now, you know, we've been concerned about Ukraine peace. And in the Aetherius Society, we have sent out a lot of spiritual energy through prayer, through healing, through direct cooperation with beings from other planets. We have sent out a lot of spiritual energy for peace in that region. You know, as I'm speaking to you at this moment, that hasn't been achieved. But there's a lot of negotiations going on. And of course, it could have led, and there were many threats that it would lead to World War III. And that hasn't happened either at the moment. So what the spiritual energy will do will change the consciousness of the people involved. That's the peace negotiators, even the politicians, the people who can make a difference, not through force, not through control, but through an offering of spiritual energy, which they can accept, even if they don't even know it's coming to them consciously. If they accept it, then they'll start to change. Now, when you get a peace treaty, wherever it be it the Middle East or wherever it is, it's only as good as the consciousness of the people involved in it. If they don't really want to keep it, that peace treaty will end. And we've seen that in the Middle East for 3,000 years at least. If there's a change of consciousness, then it will last, because the people will want it to last, or enough of them will want it to last. And that's what spiritual service can do.
Do you think as humans, we are very tribal? We love to be in our tribes, and that's one of the biggest causes for war. And can we ever overcome that and evolve past it into one planetary tribe?
Yeah, I mean, this is what higher consciousness does for you. You become one in a state, a genuine state of higher consciousness. And you see the limitation, and I will say the stupidity of these barriers. And you see them for what they are. And you don't really want them. So to answer your question, yes, I do think people are tribal, very much so. I do think people are focused on their own community, very much so. You know, it's almost pathological, the human condition, really. If we know someone who has no feeling, no empathy, no guilt, no conscience, no remorse, then they are a pathological person. They might be psychotic. We write them off. And people will, in their personal relationships, if they're a good person, they'll have empathy, they'll have feeling, they'll have sensitivity. It will spread to their family. It will spread to their friends. It might spread to their neighbors. It might spread to their community. It might, to some degree, spread to their nation. They might give a little bit to charity. Maybe so, maybe not, and that's it. But really, we are related to every other living person on earth. We are absolutely intricately involved. We are one with people we've never met, people we might completely disagree with, are all part of that same being, which is the human race. And the fact that we don't see this and we don't feel it is a kind of global pathology. The fact that we don't feel conscience, we don't feel it's our duty, actually, to help the whole world. And people don't sense that. Maybe they'll feel it for their nation, maybe not even that. This is, as I say, pathological. And then when it comes to the planet, it's not about ecology alone, or even mainly. It's about love for Mother Earth. Without her, we wouldn't have any experience at all, and people don't feel it. It's my point. They don't feel it. But as we start to change our consciousness, as we start to do a wonderful practice, I'll give one example of a practice everyone can do. It's called the violet flame practice. And this flame comes from the Mother Earth. And you can visualize this coming up through the whole of your being, actually all around you, through your aura, above the head. It's purifying, it's cleansing, it's protective. And you'll start to gain a feeling also for the Mother Earth from whom it comes. And then you break down what I'm sort of calling, in a light way perhaps, but there's a lesson here, that a kind of pathological condition that we just don't feel that empathy for humanity as a whole, most people anyway, or even any obligation or any sense of responsibility. Dr. King's first major book that he wrote, for which he was actually got an honorary doctorate in America, is called You Are Responsible. But he always blamed himself for the title, because he said he realized this is a title that just isn't going to sell books. You are responsible. But on the other hand, it's one of the greatest messages we could give anyone. Some people have that sense of responsibility. The people who decided to campaign for the abolition of the slave trade, they weren't slavers. They had no vested interest one way or the other in it, except it damaged their careers greatly campaigning for it and their financial positions at the time in some cases. But they felt responsible. They might have been living in England. They might have been living in America. They had nothing to do with it. They could have said, well, this is not I didn't start, trapping slaves and selling them. I've never done this in my life. But they felt responsible. And that's a very spiritual feeling to have. And it's one that, is lacking, I think. When we start to have it and we feel, yes, I can do something. I don't just watch the news and see the suffering in Gaza. I can actually turn the television off, raise my hands, send out white light, which contains all the colors of the spectrum, was therefore white, send out with my love, and not just through my hands, but through my heart, and pray for people there. And if they know about a craft called Satellite Number 3, which is from another planet, and cooperate with it, they can make it far more powerful, like thousands of times more powerful, and send energy out and make a difference. And when they finished, they can just seal the energy off. Now, you'll never know what good you've done. You just don't know, but you've done something. And this is going to change the consciousness of the world because it's a mind belt. That's why people can read the Akashic records. I don't know if you've ever covered that on your show, the Akashic records.
Many times.
Oh, right. Okay. So then, sorry, I should have guessed.
I want to interrupt you 1 second, though.
Please.
I don't want to get too far beyond this. You just mentioned Satellite Number 3.
Yeah.
What is that?
Yeah, I threw that in. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Tell us about that.
There's a craft, and this is one of the things that from the very beginning of the Aetherius Society that was announced in 1955. It's one of the greatest things about the revelations Dr. King made. Now, this is you might call it a UFO or UAP or a flying. It's actually not. It's a spherical shape. It's not even spherical. It's more egg-shaped or ovoid, you could say. But it's a craft that comes into orbit, not to be sighted, not to be tracked on radar, doesn't choose to be, can easily avoid that. It comes to send energy to the world. And when people are performing spiritual actions, let's just use another word, selfless actions. They're giving service not because they're being paid to alone. They're doing it, they're going above and beyond what they need to do to earn any money. And probably they're not doing for any money whatsoever. They might even be losing money to do this, but they're giving service to others to help them in small ways, in big ways, however it is. That craft, when it's in orbit, and we publish the dates of that orbit, and they are available, you can get it from our website, Aetherius.org. Your actions will be that much more powerful. Thousands of times, 3,000 times more powerful because they're in orbit. See, their problem, so many people say, why don't they just land openly and prove themselves to everyone? All the doubters, just take over all the radio stations of the world, just whatever it takes. What they won't do is interfere with us. They are incredibly subtle. And that's something that came out in the Age of Disclosure, as a matter of fact. That, they will be fired at by a missile from a jet, be it Russian, be it American. This has happened. They won't be damaged by it. They won't retaliate. They are friendly. They are forgiving. But they will give their signs, but they won't force everyone to change. Now, with Satellite Number 3, it depends on what we do. But if we do something good for our fellow man and woman, or child, or animal, or life of any kind, they will magnify it thousands of times. They will make it much greater an act. And that's the way they operate, and that's what satellite number 3 does.
So the ETs are waiting for us to spiritually evolve
Exactly.
in order for them to make contact.
Yeah, I mean, they have made contact, such as Dr. King, and they have proved themselves. They proved them. I mean, they have immobilized. I always get that mixed up. Immobilized nuclear weapons in nuclear arms centers and so on, and they have proved themselves beyond any doubt. But they are, as you absolutely brilliantly put it, they are waiting. It's a very sad thing for them. They're waiting for us to change. Their compassion is boundless. It's hard for us to comprehend. When we do change, they'll come closer and closer and closer, and eventually they'll walk among us. But they won't walk among us in a way to say, we're going to solve all your problems, we're going to sort out your agriculture, sort out your hospitals, No, we have to do it ourselves. Otherwise, we'll learn nothing. And the only reason we exist at all is to gain experience.
Here's the disagreement I have with the ETs on this subject.
Okay.
We haven't changed for thousands of years, and I don't see us changing. But what would cause a massive transformation on this planet is if they did show up everywhere undeniably.
It would cause quite a transformation, I agree, in the short term. There have been studies into this, actually, and they did a study into what would happen if a UFO, this is by psychologists, landed, say, in Washington, outside the White House and parked itself right there. And they said that all the world's media would descend upon it. There'd be crowds all around it. It'd be on TV. And gradually the interest would turn to something else, such as the state of a celebrity in somewhere, or who's playing in the Hollywood Bowl, or some other vital piece of information. And then eventually people would walk past it on their way to work. It's a very sad and ridiculous thing. I mean, if we just take a small thing like this Age of Disclosure film, and as I mentioned, I have some disagreements with it because it didn't go to the spiritual depths of the subject. But in some ways, though, it's absolutely sensational. There you have an American Secretary of State coming out while he's in power and talking about this and saying he's got proof, saying there is proof, of that, saying they've actually got craft. And has it dominated? I mean, really intelligent broadcasters like the JeffMara podcast are covering it. But has it dominated the world's media? Is it at the front of CNN? Let's stop all the other news. We won't cover the golf today. This is too big. Sorry, golf's fine, but this really matters. Are they doing that? No, they aren't doing that. And this is the state of humanity, I'm sorry to have to say. And also you'd get fear. And as I mentioned, what the governments want is power. They want power and military superiority. They're not looking at it from the point of view, how can we learn? How can we improve? How can we change? How can we come? But they have had, for example, the George Bush Jr., they say, did hold a meeting while in power to ask whether they should release some of this information. And they decided it wouldn't be good because they took into account religious factors, economic factors. As a matter of fact, the last Trump regime, the Secretary of the Treasury, did an analysis of how releasing the truth about UAPs would affect the finance of America. This is where they're at. And they decided not to release it. And they still, I mean, they're getting closer than ever. But are the public jumping up and saying, right, okay, we'd better go quickly to the Aetherius Society because they've got the most credible track record on this topic in the world over the longest period, and they have answers because the government don't. Governments don't know why they're here exactly or what exactly they want. They just know they're here. So let's all go and descend on the Aetherius Society and get to the truth of this matter. But that isn't happening. That's a pipe dream, is it not?
I still don't see how or at least when we are going to be ready.
Well, yeah, that's a very fair point. I mean, things still go on. I mean, one would like to think there's a change in consciousness, but there is a factor I should really throw into the mix here, which is that there is going to be a change, whether we like it or not, and whether we're ready or not. Because I keep coming back to the Mother Earth, and the Mother Earth has suffered tremendously. I mean, it is a total disgrace. People should be full of remorse for the way they've treated the Mother Earth, and they aren't. They are worried about the future of ecology, a lot of people, and how it will affect them and their children and their grandchildren and maybe other people. But that's all. They're not worried about the Mother Earth. But the Mother Earth is a living being. The Greeks were right, Gaia. She is, and she was the main number one focus of Dr. George King, actually. He was totally dedicated to Mother Earth as a living intelligence. And you can prove it to yourself, by the way. You can send out energy from your heart with real love to Mother Earth. And if you do it in the right way, in the right surroundings, you will receive back a kind of an energy that you can feel. You know, it depends how you do it. You might need to be guided, and that's fine. We're happy to do that. But these things are provable. The only real proof that really counts is proving it to yourself. Now, Mother Earth is going to go through a big change, or what you might call an initiation. And she isn't going to be held back forever. So change is going to come to this earth. And so there will come a point, and this has been prophesied in numerous traditions, South American, Hindu, biblical, and many other astrologers, ancient Greeks. There is going to be a time of sorting, a time of great struggle, and then a time of great light. There's a general consensus from various traditions on that. And those that are then ready, because they've prepared themselves, will be here for that wonderful, what they call New Age. That's what the New Age really is. It's not sort of a, hippie commune. It's a massive change. Nothing against hippie communes, but it's a massive change to the whole consciousness of humanity.
What are the 12 blessings that you spoke of earlier?
The 12 blessings. Do we have a copy here, gentlemen? But we think we can rustle one up. The 12 blessings is the most wonderful practice, actually. It's a very, very beautiful teaching. Have you managed to find one? I think one is forthcoming. Thank you very much. Thank you. So that's the 12 blessings. It's a series of transmissions delivered through Dr. George King in somatic trance every week for 12 weeks by the Master Jesus, who came from Venus, the bright and morning star, as he says in, I think, the book of Revelation. Not that it's based on the book of Revelation there, but he did. And he came and he returned, you could say, in 1958 to give this massive, I mean, it's not just a small extension of the Sermon on the Mount, it's an enormous extension to the Sermon on the Mount. It's cosmic. It goes all the way. I haven't found anywhere, and I look at a lot of different things. You know, we're not a one and only way organization. The only truths are in the Aetherius Society, not at all. You know, we'll look at many, many texts, the Tao Te Ching, the Buddhist Dhammapada, the Hindu scripts, and many other things. But there is nowhere that have I found such a description of what God really is. But also these 12 blessings can be used as a practice. So you can send out energy for those who work for peace. You can send out energy to the wise ones. Actually, we have a website, 12blessings.org, 12blessings.org, and we do regular online services. You don't have to be a member of the Aetherius Society. You don't have to even know much about the 12 blessings. You can join in sending energy. We have people from dozens of countries you might not expect, like Iran and Iraq, as well as other parts, you know, the Philippines, Jamaica, America, obviously Europe, America, you name it, India, and many other countries, all join in with these services, which are held very regularly. sending out energy to the world using the 12 blessings. So it's two things. It's a practice for the betterment of world peace, and it's also an incredible set of teachings as well. It's also in audio. I should have added that. We have an audio cloud thing, so people can actually not just read it, they can hear it, and they can hear this beautiful voice of the Master Jesus. And when you do, I've come across people, I've played them that voice without telling them who it was, and they said, that's Jesus. It's
Wow.
kind of identifiable voice. That may sound odd, but when you hear it, I think you'll know what I mean.
Where do you go to hear this?
So we have a thing called Aetherius Cloud, which you can find, so I'm checking my facts here, which you can find on aetherius.org. You can subscribe to it either for, you have a trial, I believe, but you can also subscribe to it. Yes, you can have a trial. You can also subscribe to it for a long period or a short period. And while you're on it, you can get access to a whole multiple range of teachings. You can hear the Master Aetherius. You can hear Mars Sector 6, who gave the 9 freedoms. You can hear many of the lectures of Dr. King, even about the 12 blessings and many other things. But you can also hear on there the voice of the Master Jesus as he gave this. And it's very beautiful. Also, we do services in our centers, in our temples, and they are available through our website. And we play every week one of the blessings on a Sunday, both from Los Angeles and from London. And you can hear, again, you'll hear that voice. You don't have to subscribe to anything. You can just tune in and join in.
So you have a center in Los Angeles?
We do. Yeah, we have our American headquarters there. I've spent years of my life there.
Great.
Very active in Hollywood.
I have family there, so the next time I go, I'd like to pop in for a visit.
They'd love to see you. They really would. They're wonderful people, and we're in touch all the time with them. We have 2 headquarters, one in London, one in LA. We work in tandem, and we perform similar tasks, and we help each other. And it's a great place to visit. They do get in touch. If you're going, get in touch with me or Darren, and we'll put you in contact with the people there, and they'll make you very welcome.
That's awesome. You spoke about Jesus being from Venus.
Yeah.
How accurate is the biblical account of him?
Yes, that's a great question, isn't it? I mean, I could go on at length about that, because I think first thing I'd say is that you have a problem with the Bible in general, I think. And I do read the Bible sometimes, but there is a problem, which is accuracy. So first of all, the Gospels were written by 4 people, and I would say, I might be wording this wrongly, but I don't think any of them knew Jesus very well. Not very well. Matthew, Mark, Luke, other than John. But the Gospel of St. John wasn't written by St. John. I believe it was the last one to be written. It was written by followers of John. That's my understanding of it. So that's the first thing. Then you have the translations that it's been through, from whatever it might be, Aramaic, Greek, to probably Latin, to whatever, English. So you have that going on. And then on top of that, you have suppression by the church of certain of the teachings in the Bible, which didn't sit very well comfortably with their business plan. Sorry. And I'm not, by the way, I'm sure there's wonderful people in the church, let me say that. But, there were also pretty bad people in the church at one time. So all of that means it doesn't end up completely accurate. But despite that, you do get, a wonderful image and picture of Jesus. You don't really find out what makes him tick. I mean, Dr. King would never compare himself to Jesus, by the way, although I actually believe he didn't come from another planet. I will say that. But when we wrote his biography, The King Who Came to Earth, it was written by 2 people who knew him very well. I mean, we'd spent years with him. I mean, I was in touch with him on the phone every day for 20 years, and my co-author, who does my job, as it were, in the American headquarters, Brian Kniep, he spent the last 10 years of Dr. King's life in residence with him. So, this was written by people who knew him and knew people who'd known him before in the earlier days. So it's much more accurate. What you don't get from the Gospels about Jesus, you don't get much about what he was really like. You're told where he went, some of the things he did, and some of the teachings he gave. He was obviously this goes without saying, very clever, as well as being a master of great love and wisdom. He could handle himself, if that's the right phrase, politically, got himself out of difficult corners, while at the same time giving great teachings, such as let he who is without sin cast the first stone. Great teaching there. But clearly manipulated his own death. And that's pretty obvious when you really look into it and look at what happened. Unusually, he ascended. Now, he went through ascension from death. That's a tremendous, incredible feat, actually, apart from anything else, to go through what he went through, that excruciating death, and then ascend through it. But then he wasn't from this world, and this enabled him to stay on Earth for a period of hundreds of years, actually, after that, because he was in an ascended body after that. But you get some idea. There are accounts, and some of them in my books. I wrote a book also called Contacts with the Gods from Space, and there's some depictions in there of him traveling in a cloud after his ascension, his resurrection, if you like. Another one who traveled in a cloud. One or two of them traveled in clouds in the Bible, and other things too. So I think you get certainly a feeling of this great master of love, but also this very careful. I almost want to say cunning, but that's probably a word that would be misunderstood. But strategic master who decided to die. I mean, anyone who went in as he did and attracted attention during a feast, or rather not a feast, a holy time, in the way that he did, was going to get into trouble, both with the Jewish authorities of the day and the Roman ones. And that's what he decided to do. But what he did, and this isn't understood because they talk about the forgiveness of sins, wasn't quite that. What it was taking on himself the karma of the sins. So he delayed a catastrophe that would have come to Earth at that time by dying. And he's not the only master who's done that type of thing. There are other masters who've taken on themselves karma in different ways to help humanity. He is a wonderful, wonderful master. In the 12 blessings, there's a great promise, actually, that he will, in fact, I will read you the great promise that he gave after the second blessing. He said this, "O adorable children, children of God, walk bravely to your salvation. Look neither to one side nor the other, but straight ahead into the very face of God, and contact this mighty light so that it may shine upon you, so that it may impregnate you forever. Be this now and by now. Adorable ones, little children, I am here with you. I will lead you into this state if you will but hold out your hand to me." Now, I can vouch for the fact that that is true, that he can lead us, and it's happened to me personally, into a very elevated state of oneness with God.
Well, I feel like we could do a whole nother podcast just on Jesus and the elements of the Bible. So maybe we'll have to
and let's not forget Sri Krishna while we're at it, because he was outstanding. And he definitely he was even more advanced than Jesus, and he came at a terrible time, because I don't know if you've read the Mahabharata, Jeff, but it's a terrible conflict, and it's clearly a nuclear catastrophe that's being described there. I mean, just to name one thing, they say that 1.6 billion died in that war. Well, there weren't 1.6 billion people on Earth when they said it happened. This is an ancient description of Atlantis, but without going into it all, Sri Krishna came, and thank God he did come, because I believe myself he enabled the continuity of humanity. And he too took on karma at the end of his life and had a lot of suffering in the way he died. And that's happened. There are others. Ramakrishna in the 19th century did that too. It's what a lot of masters do to help humanity. But yes, yeah, I'd be very happy to come back and talk to you about some of these avatars from other worlds at any time that you invite me, Jeff.
Well, if people want to find out more about the Aetherius Society, what is the website?
So the website is Aetherius, that's AETHERIUS.org. And also I have a website for if anyone wants to contact me with any questions or anything. It's richardlawrence.co.uk. And we do Darren Ball and I do a show called the Spiritual Freedom Show. And that comes out quite regularly if people are interested in the kind of the deeper teachings of the Aetherius Society and many other things too. So, do get in touch. We welcome you if you're interested. We don't go out to convert anybody, Jeff. We're not a cult. We're not interested in recruiting, but we are interested in sharing. And those people who are interested in our sharing will be most welcome.
Is your show on YouTube?
It is on YouTube, yeah. The Spiritual Freedom Show.
All right, great.
I think there's just it's the Spiritual Freedom Show with Richard Lawrence. I've got Darren here prompting me, so that's what you search for, I believe. The Spiritual Freedom Show with Richard Lawrence.
If people want to find out more about these books, are they also on the website?
Yes, so you'll find them on the Aetherius Society website. You'll find them on my website. Some of the books are in other languages as well. If you have, for example, Spanish speakers or Italian or even Russian. Some of my books are in fact, one of my the first book I wrote, which is called Unlock Your Psychic Powers, went out in Russia as an audio book this year. That's 32 years after it was published.
How well was it received?
In Russia, I'd love to know. It's very hard to get information from Russia. I don't wonder why. And it's impossible to get royalties, actually. But nevertheless, it's out there. And that's what matters.
Well, Richard, before we finish up, can you leave us with a last positive message?
Well, I'm going to go back to the message that I quoted earlier, actually, which was a message that is one of the greatest statements in the planetary system. And this was revealed to Dr. King in a transmission very early on. And the statement is, be still and know that I am God. And I don't think there's any better news anyone could have than that. To know that within us all is a divine spark, a divine essence, perfection, because people can get very down. And everybody does at times. They can lose confidence. They can wonder, am I really up for this? And if you know that within you, within us all, is that unlimited potential, that divine spark, and if it helps, you can always say this very simple aphorism, actually, which is in Realize Your Inner Potential. You can say this mentally to yourself, I am the divine presence which is creating perfection throughout my whole life. And I've used that, and I know many others who have, and it will feed your subconscious, and it will build you up with a certain confidence, but a real confidence, not a sort of egoistical type of false confidence, but one that's based on truth, which is your own divine self.
Richard, thank you for your message, and thank you for coming back and being my guest.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thanks for watching the JeffMara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.